So please welcome Zachary Jack.
The Iowa Manifesto is predicated on 5 descriptive principles or reminders of what, to my way of thinking, makes Iowa, Iowa. I present them here in order of their importance to our state's well-being. So I've laid out these 5 principles. I don't know that I'll read these all in their entirety because I'd rather skip to what I think we can do about them. So I'll launch into the 5 here. I'm going to have to periodically take a swig from this water. I apologize for that. The first one is providence. Iowa is provident. By this I mean Iowa is a state of workers, of makers, of producers. It must not become a state left to consumers, critics, and environmentally dubious manufacturers. It might smell like hypocrisy for a college teacher to imply we have too many smarty pants and scholars. That is not what I mean to say. What I am saying is that we have in this state developed too great a divide between scholars and workers, between government-funded and grassroots, between observers and doers. To my mind, we have become like Britain, where I lived and studied for a year while in college and where I've returned for writing residencies, a state of antiques, museums, and reliquaries. We have bowed out prematurely. We have also become a culture of history buffs rather than history makers. I admit I am as guilty of this historical preoccupation as anyone, though I chastise myself for that tendency nearly every day. Again, I am not saying we need to be less history conscious. In fact, we need to know our history more fully, but simply that we need to temper our nostalgia with active work towards the future. Let's skip around here. So I talk about a typical Iowa progression, and the typical Iowa progression is this. The farmer farmed and the farmer's son superintends a farm or underwrites farm insurance, or the factory worker worked while the daughter of the factory worker designs her senior art show to reflect the evils of the industrial economy. My point is that my generation, Generation X, and the generation behind mine, Gen Y, should not become a class of recapitulators, retellers, and collagers. On the opposite side of the generational spectrum, I feel Iowa's baby boomers are too much in retirement in this state, literally and figuratively, to invite the state's young people to actually participate in the doing rather than the retelling of a life's work. As I think about the Iowans I know who are 55 or older, I know very few who are still fully occupationally and publicly engaged. So when we think about calling our young people back to the state, we should think about what we would have them do when they get back. If the farmer is retired and tired, what chance does the farmer's daughter have in taking up the plow? Where does she learn the craft if she didn't learn it fully in her childhood? A reciprocation is necessary here. If baby boomers want Iowans to return, they must give them something compelling to return to. And the second principle here, for me, that reflects Iowa is Iowa as a caring entity, a caring state. Having lived for almost 8 years in the South, I know Iowa hospitality is not as legendary as its southern equivalent, but it is more genuine. The rest of the country knows this, as surveys show they associate Iowa, more than any other state, with the heartland, and that they look to us for models of civility, decorum, and dialogue. Iowa's privileged position in the presidential primaries is both a historical coincidence, I suspect, and a rational national nod to our good sense. Caring of the kind I have in mind is best manifest by teaching, farming and environmental stewardship, and health care. Iowa already excels in these areas, though it does not adequately publicize its achievements or secure funding equal to its excellence. Next one is intelligence. Let's face it, Iowa is smart. And not just book smart, as our position in the top 5 of standardized test scores makes clear every year, but smart in terms of accumulated best practices and good horse sense, the kind of advice I sought to anthologize in Letters to a Young Iowan. To affirm this point, we need only ask ourselves this question: who better to help you on a cold, snowy night when your car is broken down than an Iowa farmer? The farmer savior is just one manifestation of the ways in which Iowa is singularly able to help. Iowa also has a tradition of good government and effective administration. I was going to skip there, but I think I'll continue. Born of upbringings in our closely knit small towns and cities and farms. Helping to run a farm or a church supper as a child is good preparation for public life and service, as many of our current legislators will tell you. Given such a rare endowment, Iowa should be an exporter of innovative government rather than a lackey or a copycat, as it has been in recent memory. Fourth principle is dream. Field of Dreams and Shoeless Joe, the book on which the movie is based, did more to popularize Iowa's dreamy qualities than any single text I can cite. Our land itself, a subtle canvas provoking thought, is part of the explanation for our dreaminess, though that line of inquiry has been followed by many others and need not be elaborated on here. But owning up to the fact that Iowa is a dream means more than warmed-over analysis of an evocative landscape. It means that Iowa, with its rich history of small liberal arts colleges and towns founded with utopian aims, lends itself to what the Plains Indians celebrated as power visions, idiosyncratic yet mythic dreams of ambitious destinies and singular fates. Iowa's providence affords Iowans more room for risk than many other places in the country, where the soil and the people are less kind, less tolerant of experiment. My great-grandfather's thesis, expressed in a nutshell as first the furrow and then us, or the words accompanying the Grant Wood mural at my alma mater, Iowa State. And here I have to paraphrase because I stared at this mural for many, many minutes but never quite memorized the slogan. Where the plow goes, the arts will follow, is my paraphrase. And all that means our artistic designs have an agricultural seedbed and an agricultural security net. We have agriculture to thank for our present ability to experiment. But if we are to repay agriculture, we ought to spend the intellectual capital its sacrifice has afforded and foster a truly novel state. The fifth and the last principle is community. I once heard it said that Iowa has more historical ethnic diversity in its patchwork quilt of small towns than any other state in the nation. That seems right to me. Though Iowans are a self-reliant people, we have historically found innovative ways to come together across generations and across city and county limits. The rise of the commuting culture, wrongly vilified, is indeed a double-edged sword. But mobile culture should be a vehicle allowing us to come together more frequently and more productively than ever before. Instead, it appears to have further isolated us into haves and have-nots, industrial centers, and bedroom communities. Iowa's history, at least so far as the Lincoln Highway, Interstate 80, and John Deere represent it, has always been about the internal combustion engine and the work made possible by mobile cultures. The Chautauqua itself, the model for tonight's series, is a perfect example of edifying and entertaining traveling culture.